Well, tonight I'm going to continue talking about um, this book, Perfect Brilliant Stillness by David Carse. And I'm only into the first 60 pages or so. It's a book we've talked a little bit about in the past, but we haven't given it as much attention as some of the other works that we've read. I've listened to a lot of it in the car. When Evelyn and I are driving, we often hear snippets of it because the audio book is read by Terence Stamp, and he does a very entertaining job. But I want to convey the experience of reading this book is a little interesting. It reminds me, the other day, a friend of mine gave me a lift in their car. It was only a matter of a couple of blocks. I had to go somewhere, and I rode together with this gentleman. And unfortunately, he's not a very good driver. And so the experience of riding with him was very herky-jerky. He's too heavy on the gas and too heavy on the brake, so that you have this experience of lunging forward and then going back, lunging forward and going back. And it's a little like reading this book. It's a herky-jerky experience in cognitive dissonance, because on the one hand, he offers in one paragraph pearls for you to delight in, and in the next paragraph, he snatches them away. And I think the book has that flavor to it because he probably had some amount of reluctance and hesitation in telling his story. Because last week we said that his main message is there's no one home. There's no one home.
You're having trouble?
Yes, I can't line Zoom and my text.
Ugo's having trouble joining us.
Oh,
What page are you on, Paul?
I'm not on a page.
Okay.
I'm kind of trying to weave this in with some thoughts that we were talking about last week, and then I'm going to read some sections from David. So I think that there was some kind of reluctance operating in that he says there's no one home. And if that's true, then why write a book about a personal story and perhaps reinforce the conditioning we're all trying to break out of? You know, he as a teacher, the reader as a student, along with the larger frame of conditioning we talked about last week, our conditioning to this consensus reality of a dream world that we're all kind of wrapped up in. Carse doesn't want to reinforce the me story we all carry in an illusory reality that we take to be real. Because that's our central issue, isn't it? That in this taken for granted consensual reality, this seemingly natural but illusory dream world, we all believe we are mind-body entities, individuals intermingling with other mind bodies in a seamless flow of experience we take to be infused with personal choice and independent action. That's the dream we're all caught up in. That's the fundamental problem, the fundamental imaginary mistake, taking ourselves to be something we're not. And it may all be a dream, but as dream characters, we're stuck in separate identities full of drama and struggle. But as Carse points out, there's only one. never two. No separation, only the timeless, ever-present shining of all this is. You, the highest truth posits, you are that. Consciousness, all that is, doesn't split into separate bundles of awareness called body minds. It has no parts to split. Indivisible, without limits, neither here nor there, but everywhere. It has no coordinates, no location, yet it's the very ground of being. It's not of this world, it's beyond. Consciousness is your true nature. And yet, the mistake in identity holds. The dream continues, and we, dream characters, seekers after truth, search for the key, the portal, the gateless gate, the ultimate understanding, which will render us whole. But the search itself is in the dream. Ideas, beliefs, and concepts strung together in a thread of dualistic reasoning fail to express the inexpressible. Krishnamurti says, the word is not the thing. All our misguided efforts seeking after truth, all our individual and shared experiences, even what we're doing right now, our weekly spiritual transcendence group, so to speak. Even this is part of the dream, an entertainment package, a free option, if you will, included in the consensual reality program that we're all so thoroughly immersed in. Carse wants us to be wary of any story told, whether it's mine, yours, his, Krishnamurti's, Nisargadatta, the Buddha. It's all, he says, it's all just noise. The Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. The ultimate understanding does exist, cannot be expressed. Here's Carse, he says, dream events in the dream life of a dream character have no lasting significance. They are for entertainment only. Don't get sidetracked, he says. Be still. Who is the I in stillness? That's what you want. Don't get sidetracked into personal story. He's trying to point us toward a way toward disidentifying from the dream. Now, before I read more of what he said, let me just tell you quickly the essence of his story. It's about what happened in the jungle. Nothing happened in the jungle. So Carse was this guy who thought he was going to join the priesthood, got there, got disillusioned about what he found, dropped out, and then spent the rest of his middle-aged life struggling, working as a carpenter, as a builder, going through 2 marriages, a suffering soul in therapy, out of therapy, on medication, at times just struggling to get by like most of us. And somewhere along the line, he gets interested in tracing his Native American heritage, and that brings him in contact with some shamans and medicine men. one thing leads to another, and he decides to go on a trip to Ecuador, to the rainforest with these people, to spend some time in the indigenous culture and experiencing what he could find there. And as it would have it, all goes well at first, but he has a couple of encounters that start to get him worried. He almost eats some kind of a fruit or a food that's highly poisonous. He has some kind of a near encounter with a highly poisonous insect or a bug or something. And this starts a cascading panic that maybe this trip was ill-founded and he was in over his head. And that panic seizes him and takes over his entire being. But he says, in the midst of the fear that was growing in my gut, the certainty that I was going to die if things continued as they were, in addition to that, there was also a deep sense that what was being offered here was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for what I thought of at the time as wholeness. The awareness of this was imprecise and very confused. Yet in the middle of this anxiety, there was also this sensing that maybe there's something here that's supposed to happen for me. That nevertheless, a very strong spiritual force had brought me here to the jungle with the purpose of offering an opportunity for deep transformation and healing of what I saw then as my body, soul, and spirit. And so rather than retreat in utter fear to his hut, he stayed in the difficult, uncomfortable feelings and refused to retreat, as it were. He said to himself, well, if I'm going to die, and I am going to die, if not here, then somewhere, if not then sometime, then if that's what's needed, if that's what it takes, then this is a good place to die. He says, once this thought occurred, both the body and the mind went quite still. And there was a feeling as if someone very strong and gentle had walked up behind me and placed their hands on my shoulders. Good, I thought, this is very good. And I completely let go and relaxed into this new awareness that for this body to die here and now was a very good, appropriate thing. That this was why I was here. Now, this was not resignation of something unwanted, but a wholehearted acceptance and surrender in joy to what was known to be right and perfect. In mere moments, the entire thought and feeling and physical symptoms of extreme fear for my life dissolved and gave way to a pure, joyful acceptance, which even the certainty of death couldn't take away. And then he says, but the most remarkable thing about this transformation was that it was quite clear to me that I had done nothing to cause or to earn it. One moment the fear was there, intense and graphic, and the next moment there was only its complete opposite: peace, joy, clarity, and an appreciation of being so well cared for by the unknown force of spirit that even death would be arranged and carried out in an appropriate and perfect manner. It was also clear that I had not worked the fear through. I hadn't done anything to resolve anything. To argue or suggest that I had somehow faced my fear and by some psychological process broken through to the other side would be a complete fabrication. This new state of body and mind, of surrender and acceptance had simply landed in my lap without any accomplishment on my part. It seemed clear that left to my own devices, I would still be in that agonizing state of paralyzing fear and anguish. That I was not, but was instead sitting there in pure gratitude, joy, and acceptance was obviously pure gift. It was astonishing. Then he goes on to say, a crucial element here is the idea, the concept of surrender and the inexpressible truth that lies behind or prior to this surrender. Most other spiritual traditions, methods of self-improvement, or paths of work treat this as a process, something you work at. Working at letting go or uncovering your stuff so that it can fall away or be purified. But of course, here as always, truth has a radical component. Since awakening is the realization that there is no one here to awaken, then the letting go, the surrender, is of one's entire individual existence. Teachers of pure non-duality frequently emphasize there's no prerequisites, nothing that has to come before the understanding happens. He says in his situation, there's living proof of that. He was just gifted this. And yet, he says at the same time, there's also this surrender. Essential, it seems, necessary. Back in the jungle, at that point where all this happened, where nothing happened, surrender also happened. Like the understanding later, it was a total gift, unearned, undeserved, unsought. And I see now, for this body mind at least, it was necessary in order for the rest to happen. How can there be understanding that one is not without surrendering that one is? The very concept of the total understanding necessarily includes surrender. For it all begins with the willingness, thy will be done, and ends in seeing that one is not. And here he quotes Balsakar, who was one of his guides or teachers that helped him integrate his experience. Balsakar, the essential basis of self-realization is the total rejection of the individual as an independent entity. Whether it comes as a spontaneous understanding or through an utter surrender of one's individual existence. That surrender of an individual existence is the cracking through the consensual reality that we're all swimming in. How Carse is going to give us pointers to do that, I'm going to report back to you as I get through this book. I'm only in the beginning. It's quite a book. It's 400 pages of his elaboration of what happened in the jungle, where, of course, nothing happened. But just to give you a little more, along this line of losing yourself to find yourself, he quotes Jesus also. Only he who loses his life will find it. Again, not my will, but thine be done. Because it is understood that there is no mine, no me to will. It's the surrender of all vestiges of the sense of an individual person, including, ironic as it may seem, all those hopes and dreams and prayers of ever becoming a good or better person, or a person other people might like or love or be drawn to. It is the complete surrender into all that is. And yes, he says, the final surrender, that total understanding, is sudden and happens once. And that once is now. And that now is eternal. And I think so far, this concept of the surrender, it's just, I guess, having that willingness, like he said, to let go, to let things go, to let things go, so you can be in the stillness and discover perhaps what that holds for each of us. Whatever that holds for each of us. The surrendering, the releasing of the holding on to our individual stories. And so as you read the book, he's constantly doing that, telling you elements of the story and reminding you that there is no story, that we're all, that this is all participating in an imaginary conversation about a make-believe reality in which we believe we're limited and stuck. But in fact, the very opposite is true. We think there's a gate we have to pass through. And we pass through the gate, we turn around, and there was never a gate to begin with. It was always here, available to us.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
The letting go, the releasing of so much that we hold on to and allow ourselves to be preoccupied with. Which of course brings us back to witnessing.
Mm. Mm. He said that there was a letting go of his whole existence. So it can't be a me then that surrenders. And it can't be a me then that lets go. What is it that lets go? You see, when there's an awareness, something comes up in us, let's say a fear, and there is an awareness of that fear as it arises in our consciousness. There's a witnessing of it. In that moment of witnessing of it, there is a letting go. As long as we don't identify with it, hold on to it, and embellish it, right? There's just a pure apperception, a direct witnessing of this fear. So the letting go in that sense is the see, as Krishnamurti says, the seeing is the doing. In the seeing is the letting go. So in that moment, there is no me that lets it go.
Absolutely.
The seeing is the doing, is the
Mhm.
happening.
Mhm.
Although he says nothing.
There's no middleman here.
There's no me. So I think maybe that's what he was talking about. The letting go is in the immediate witnessing, the direct perception of whatever it is that arises in our awareness, in our consciousness. The letting go. And of course, the difficulty is that the me doesn't want to let go. When there is, especially with fear, there's a wanting to get out of it, resolve it, find a solution to it. And most of us are paralyzed by it when fear arises. I guess it depends on the depth of the fear. So
I think his sister, as he was making plans to go to Ecuador, was pleading with him not to go because you are going to die. If you go, you are going to die. And little did he know that that's exactly what happened
that's
in
right.
that hut in the jungle.
That's
He suffered, or he realized a sort of a death of self.
that's right.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
annihilation of the self.
Of the me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's why he keeps saying no. There was the
no one home.
no one's
no
home.
one home.
No one's home.
And he's reminding us that there's no one home.
And when he says, this is as good a place as anywhere to die, right here in this jungle, on this cushion, in this hut in the treehouse or wherever he was,
Yes.
this is as good a place as any to die. And man, that's exactly what happened.
Right.
And that dying is available to us in each moment. Like
Mhm.
St. Paul in the Catholic Church says, I die daily.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's crossed the literature of all different kinds of studies and philosophies and organizations. And the surrender, it is the surrender. The surrendering, it is done by the egoic self. You know, it's like he's talking about the Christianity, not my will, but thy will be done. So it is an act of basically a relinquishment of the me. That's the surrender, the relinquishment of me. Even in like the Bhagavad Gita, you know, where Bhishma, you know,
Yeah.
is in the end is killed. He can't be killed except by a woman, but it's basically this story about how, you know, he has to. It's a surrender. It's the surrender, and that's how he's finally killed. It's just, yeah, in the end, it's a very simple thing, right? We just let go of the me. Like, because the me doesn't really exist. So in letting go of the me, we're letting go of that delusion, which we've put up and we're seeing, but only because we perpetuate it. And so we're just saying, you know what, I'm just going to let all this go. It's a very, actually can be a very comforting and relaxing and freeing thing.
Yes.
There is that quality to it,
Yes.
definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
We have that opportunity like every night. We don't have to go to the jungle in the Amazon or wherever.
Right.
It is.
That's right.
We could just each night we can just sort of totally say, you know what, I'm just gonna totally let go.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why he's perplexed later on in the book that people, you know, other students are coming up to him and say, now, where did you go in Ecuador? Can you give me the
Right.
map? Let me know exactly how I get there.
Right. Right.
Of course,
Well-
the mind that's saying to let go is still the old mind.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, you know, there's a question there about, can the old mind recognize letting go?
Well,
until you
that-
understand what the old mind is doing and how the old mind works. I mean, you can talk to yourself until you're blue in the face, but it's the ego that's talking.
That's right. That's right. That's true. That's right.
Well, that's why he says, don't get wrapped up in the stories. It's just noise. It's pure entertainment,
That's it.
pure entertainment.
It can be the ego talking, but it also can be the self with a capital S talking. That part of us is here now.
Yes.
You know, it's not just the ego that has access to the mouth and the vocal cords.
That's right.
I don't understand how the big S self can talk to you and you can get an understanding. I mean, that's one. You can understand it. It's there. The minute you put words into it, you're back into the old mind again.
Yes. I
Well,
think.
don't forget,
I don't
we're using
understand that.
a dualistic language to try to talk about
Yeah.
something that's beyond. So
Yeah.
we can't be too rigid about the words here.
Yes, I think witnessing, see that witnessing, which is not of the me, because the me is in time. That witnessing has nothing to do with time. It has nothing to do with the past, the present, or the future. It's in the eternal now. And that witnessing is, I just love the word apperception, because it's a direct seeing. It's like cutting through the mind, and it's a direct seeing. And that's timeless. That seeing is, I think that seeing is from the self, the absolute.
Okay, and
Is-
yes, here he said,
Does he?
this is why awakening or enlightenment, the occurrence of this knowing or understanding, is said by masters and teachers to be always instantaneous, not gradual or by degrees. Gradual or by degrees infers duration in time.
Right.
To think of awakening as happening gradually is still to be thinking of this as happening to an individual who is experiencing in time. Awakening brings with it the awareness that there is no individual and no time. The understanding by its nature is outside of time and occurs outside of time, and thus always appears from the vantage point of time-bound consciousness as occurring instantaneously. That is, not taking any time.
Oh, wait, could you read that sentence again, please?
The understanding by its nature is outside of time and occurs outside of time. And yet it always appears from the vantage point of time-bound consciousness as occurring instantaneously. That is, not taking any time. You know, it's like the fruit slowly ripens, but at the instant it drops.
Yes, yes.
Right. And that intersection in this temporal experience is now.
Mhm.
Right,
That's right.
right. That's the now. That's why it's referred to as the eternal now.
Right.
Right. Right. So that's the intersection between the timeless and the eternal, or between the timeless and the
And the
temporal
time,
is
right.
now.
Is the
Uh-huh.
now, right. And Chip, what you said before was really important about dying every moment, because that's another, the dying every moment is really a letting go every moment.
That's the surrender. The dying is the surrender.
And-
Surrender is the
And you
dying.
know, can we do that? Are we able to do that? Are we able to do that when this image has been hurt? Are we able to die to that hurt? Are we able to do that when there's a disappointment because what we desired didn't come through? Are we able to die to that desire? Are we able to do that moment by moment? Because, I mean, that's what death obviously is.
Yeah, but that kind of requires getting to a point where you have enough understanding, whatever words you want to use. I like to use understanding because it bugs a friend of mine. But anyhow, it can only happen when the mind becomes absolutely still.
Yes.
And then I think what from a Krishnamurti point of view, is that it allows a part of the brain which we don't use to come into being. And that's a part of the brain that can recognize new. So that I've been struggling with trying to get that, to be. But there's something there that this business of, the part of the brain that we use is totally conditioned.
Yeah.
So that any activity, any movement of that brain, it's got to be conditioned, and it's probably in the past or the future, and it's not in the present. Because in the present, the reality exists. I mean, that's all you got from moment to moment, whatever is happening. I mean, I hate to disappoint myself, but memories are that, but I only got what I got here. Like I had troubles getting on Zoom right now. That was a reality. I mean, it's no way of getting around that. So that the only way that it seems to me that a way of really getting an understanding of what's being said is to try to figure out how to quiet the mind, so that when the mind is quiet, the me is not operating. And then something else comes into operation.
Yes.
And it's the part. I think what really impresses me is that, like J.K. talks about the brain, that we just use a very, very small portion of it. And that's where all the consciousness, the content of consciousness is. That's where our memory is. That's where our thoughts come from. That's where the thinking comes from. And when that's operating, you can't see reality, or it's very difficult to see reality, because by definition, all of the thoughts and all of the memory in there have been put into memory being conditioned, being biased, being distorted somehow. And not all of it, but a good part of it. So I think what Krishnamurti is getting at is if you want to see something new, if you want to get to a place where there's something new, the only way you can do that is by really getting the mind still. The mind does not, the old mind doesn't work, and that gives opportunity for this larger section of the brain, which I haven't used, which is there. It's just
Yes,
to come into being.
It will go. So,
Yes.
And perhaps one way he's suggesting to quiet the mind is to surrender rather than chew on it, like a cow chewing their cud, rather than be entertained by the mind, rather than be pulled in one direction after another. He's suggesting perhaps that a surrender, a letting go of that which the mind likes to present, likes to entertain. That there's
Or using awareness to see that when the mind is running, the me is working, and you're not surrendering. In other words, try to get an understanding of exactly what does surrender mean. It means what? What does it mean? It means what? Not drawing attention to the fact that something is operating, and when it's operating, then you can't let go, because you're in your own thoughts, or you're in your own dialogue, whatever it's called.
Ugo, you said something that I think is backwards. You're saying you're when the me is working, then and basically, it's in this process, and then at some point when the me stops, something else comes into operation. You were saying that earlier. And I think it's exactly the opposite. That's something else that you're talking about, or what I'm calling the self, is always in operation. That ever-present awareness is always here. And what happens is we're not aware of that ever-present awareness because that me is functioning. And it's taking our attention away from that self with a capital S that is always here. So I think you're right on target when you're talking about stilling the mind. And also, mind and brain are not interchangeable. I just think that's just a little side note here. But Evelyn, getting back to what you were saying before, if you have a hurt, can we let it go? Can we die? I think that's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is when we are in the present moment, those hurts, those desires, anything else does not exist, right? In other words, the only way a hurt exists is if we're enlivening it through mind, right? But if we're in that present moment, whatever it is, it could be this conversation, there is no past, there is no future. We're here now and we're in this existence. So we actually, it's this brilliant design because each of us has this opportunity to practice this one-pointed awareness, or whatever you want to call it, this witnessing process, each and every moment of our existence until we're able to fully release or surrender into that moment. And also, just one other last thing quickly, the joy of this is just so readily apparent, right? We've all had these experiences, whether it's a piece of music, a sunset, an interaction with fellow whatever we are's, these things are, each moment is this divine opportunity for us to experience this blissful now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And like you said earlier, it is with us always available,
Right.
always right there.
But I think when we're going through these emotions, whether it's anger or shame or whatever, that it is important to be with it and not to try to rationalize it by saying, "Oh, I'm just being dualistic and this is not correct." But it's actually embracing that moment, whether that moment is bringing terror or beauty, just embracing that moment. And really, if you get to the point of not having a preference, I mean, we all, of course, want the good and don't want the bad, but there's nothing wrong with having the bad even.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what I said. I'm not suggesting that we don't fully embrace the experience, that we're in, whether it's anger or shame or all these types of things. What I'm saying is we have the opportunity to not be bound by these experiences. So, when we feel remorse, or when we feel shame, or when we feel, in love, or, there can be lots of different kinds of emotions. But the thing about all of it is that all of them can trap our the self with a capital S. In other words, we can get totally bound into this thing of, I did this terrible thing, I did this amazing thing. I'm the best person that ever exists.
Yes,
All
yes.
these kinds of things can bind us. The
Mhm.
freedom that we're looking for is the release from that whole story,
Right.
so that we can just totally experience this present moment. And there's a liberation that we find in that.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't suggesting, Bill, that we not experience sadness or any of those things, because each of those things actually, if you're in that moment of incredible sadness or whatever, it's really also kind of an amazing experience, right?
Right.
Well,
At that point, there isn't really a good or bad. It's just this incredible experience of life, or I don't know what word you guys use.
Well,
I'm sorry, I used the experience word, but it's just,
Well-
it's this incredible beingness in the current, in the present moment.
yeah. In the experience is the opportunity for going beyond.
Yes.
Chip, I know you didn't mean that at all, Chip, when you said that. I knew that. But I just wanted to clarify, at least for me, it's important to experience, these emotions, this moment, whatever the moment brings. It's important to experience that.
Well,
That's
you
where
know,
a lot of the problems are in not accepting what is, I find that in myself. Most of the problems I have, if I can stay with it, it's that I'm denying what's happening. I don't want what's happening. And, that doesn't work. I'm in contradiction, and that gets all kinds of anxiety in me and causes me stress until now that I've been doing this stuff. At some point I can catch it. And
Yeah.
once I see myself doing it, then it just depowers it, because I say, hey, who's doing it? I said, it's this phantom thing. It's this thing that has no substance, that we call the me, or whatever you want to call it. And once I can get to that point where I see what's happening, it just seems to depower it. I mean, it might take a little while, but it sure takes the sting out.
Yeah, I'm a little bit
go ahead.
leery also about the state of bliss. I think trying to strive for any state is we get off track, and bliss becomes sort of a golden thing. It's out there. It's not in here.
Yes.
So
Yes. It becomes
There were
another object.
yeah.
There were stories about St. Paul when he was being tortured after he had his epiphanies or realizations or whatever, and how he's getting tortured, and he's basically like in an ecstatic state because he's just in that moment, and it's just he's had that liberation from the me. So I think when I'm talking about bliss, what I'm talking about is each moment has the opportunity for that revelatory level of experience where it's just this amazing adventure, play, life that we're able to experience. And there's no limit to it. And there's a newness to it in each moment.
I was just, did he say here that when there was a realization of this fear, before he let go, didn't he say he was fully consumed in that fear? It's like, I thought he said he was in the fear.
In the midst of the fear that was growing in my gut,
Yeah.
the certainty that I was going to die
Uh-huh.
if things continued as they were, in the midst of that, there was also a deep sense that what was being offered here was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for what at the time I thought of as wholeness.
So he is in this fear.
Yes.
He's,
And he says, but there was also this other flicker of awareness. And he says, and this awareness was imprecise. In fact, it was quite confused and fuzzy, but nevertheless, there was that strong spirit. But nevertheless, very strong, that whatever spiritual force had brought me here to the jungle had done so with the purpose of offering an opportunity of deep transformation and healing. So it's like in the middle of the despair and the pain, there was a glimpse of awareness that there was something also present here at the same time that maybe was available to
So,
me.
but you had to stay with that, even if it was just for a moment.
Yeah,
You had to stay with the pain of the fear.
yes.
Because otherwise the me would come in and say, do something, get away from this.
The mind was running scenarios of various disgusting deaths in the jungle.
Ah, yes,
The
yes.
pulse was hard and rapid. And it was not only the increasing darkness that was causing my tunnel vision. I wanted to run,
Ah, yes.
but the only place to run was back to my hut and dismal defeat. So I sat and stared into the jungle.
Okay.
And that's
Huh?
when he had the thought, once he stayed with it and didn't
That's-
bolt, he said, and if this means
if
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
die,
die,
so be it.
Okay.
And that's
So-
the surrender.
Okay, so this is interesting because so the fear arises, the mind comes in and says, I want to run away, I've got to do something. And then there's nowhere to run. There was nowhere to go. So he went back to his hut.
Well, don't forget, part of why he didn't run was this feeling that there was a purpose here, that there was an opportunity for some healing.
Ah,
That was something that he got a glimpse of. And when
ah.
the thought of running, he'd be running away from that possibility. He would have been a defeated and a miserable person that he came to the jungle. That's how he would leave.
So there was, again, it's like almost awareness shined a light that there was something,
To retreat to the safety would be to miss that opportunity and leave the jungle as I had come, a conflicted, restless, and anguished soul.
I guess what I'm looking at or trying to understand is that, or underscore the importance of being able to stay with the pain. I know he said he didn't face his fear, but he certainly stayed long enough with it to just stay there, he says, and look at the jungle. And then in that split second, it changed. There was this light of where I thought he described, because I think that's the same thing that happens with anger. When anger arises, and I think most of us are much more familiar with anger than fear. Not to say we're not plenty familiar with fear, but anger seems there's more awareness of anger. There's more rising of anger. And when one stays with that, just holds it and doesn't move, so that there are no runaway thoughts about it. In that moment, it does get stronger, but then it seems to suddenly just dissipate. And I thought that's what he's describing happened with the fear. And when that dissipated, there was the light. Then there was light. And it's interesting because when he said that there was something else there that was comforting him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that was part of the mind,
Yeah.
you know, but it doesn't matter. From there, it went to the realization that no one is home. And there was like a dissolving of the me.
Right.
And what's so interesting is that for so many years, that was the teaching of Krishnamurti. that which arises, if we stay with it and just let it be, that it dissolves. And in that dissolution, there's the beginning of the dissolution of the me.
Well, whatever arises in stillness.
That's right.
All there is this stillness. Everything arises in that. If you don't add to it, it arises and passes, rises and passes.
Right.
There's also this interesting this synchronicity process that's at work with this and the joining between the temporal and the eternal states, because he's talking about how he sort of had this sense that this is his once in a lifetime opportunity. He's having all these experiences that are kind of converging into this moment. So he's having experiences that are not only, let's say this happened at 8:00 p.m. or something like that. It's not only just at 8 p.m. He's also recognizing that his whole trip, going back 2 months or whatever it was, he's seeing this all it's all getting compacted and compressed into basically the picture, which is eternal, which is outside of a temporal experience, right? He's recognizing this all is happening now. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very, very cool. I think.
Yeah.
So we're witnessing. So he saw this an offering of this opportunity for this deep transformation, right?
Right.
So is this being given to him? So this whole thing has been set up, and it's all coming together into that perfect moment. And it's so interesting. Like we see like sporting events or something, you can see this, like the Super Bowl is a good example, where they're playing for hours and hours, whatever. And then it's this last thing, and he's reaching and he makes the touchdown, or he does the kick or whatever, these amazing situations that sort of bring us to these wonderful, or a great story, a great piece of music again.
Yes.
But one of the things I think that we recognize, however unconsciously it happens, is we recognize the merging of the temporal and the eternal in those moments. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going a little.
But when he says it came undeserved and it came without any practice,
Yeah.
it happened. And then he said, but nothing happened because it's a dream.
Right.
So there is a freedom, Chip, as you said before, when we're able to say, not my will, but thine be done. And we're not talking about a God entity up there and we're here. We're just talking about this absolute consciousness. And we're saying, we have no control.
Get out of the way. Right.
That's it. All we can do is get out of the way. And one body mind is going to wake up. And millions of other body minds are not going to wake up, but it doesn't matter because this is all the dream and we're all characters in this dream. However, what we can do, I think anyway, to alleviate the psychological suffering that we're all going through, is to shine this awareness or have this awareness or have this witnessing of when the me, the past, comes into this now moment and causes us psychological pain and suffering by the images we have of each other, by the images we have of ourselves. The image I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough, I lack something. Those images that we carry about ourselves, to have that apperception in the moment that that's what's appearing and letting it go in that moment. You know, 2 days ago, one of my friends here in Florida, she was riding her bike and she fell, but she's lucky. She did not get badly hurt, but she got hurt enough. She slammed her knee against the cement when she fell. She said the moment that happened, she heard herself say, "You idiot, you stupid fool. How could you have let that happen?" And there was a witnessing of that thought. And in the immediate witnessing of that thought, she said she pulled the plug on it. It went away. And there was just a calmness. And this was so interesting how she put it. She said, all that energy in that moment of, "You idiot, look what you did," she released that. And all of a sudden, she said, these people came running toward her. So she felt, she invited a new energy to come to her, of people who were good and kind and compassionate, and helped her and iced her and brought her to an EMT. But anyway, the point is that I just thought that was just so interesting, that in the moment of awareness, that's something we can, at this level, at this relative level of existence, we can witness that which arises in us that's causing us pain and suffering psychologically, and pull the plug on it in the moment. Anything beyond that? Are we going to be fully awakened? Are we going to totally free ourselves of this me? Who knows? It may happen, it may not happen. That cannot be a goal, because then that's the goal of the me. But waking up does occur. And maybe that's all we need to know.
Right. Right.
That it does occur because it is here right now.
And it's your true nature.
Right.
Well, we've done it again.
Wally, I got one more quick question for you.
Yeah.
I heard you doing some background with this David Carse stuff. Is that in that book, The Perfect Brilliant Stillness, or did you read something else?
No, you wrote.
I read to you first my thoughts about what I was reading.
Right, but also, didn't you give some background on him? Like you said, he was a carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
Where'd you get that stuff from?
It's
in the book.
it's in the book.
Oh, it's in the book. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
He
I want to
just
check that out.
He just very quickly in a paragraph, that's what he says. He was in the priesthood. He dropped out. He was offered a lot of jobs that had leadership kind of things, and he wasn't interested in that. He's a kind of a loner guy, but he suffered. He had 2 marriages. He was in a lot of therapy, and he considered himself, like many of us, to be unhappy in a lot of ways, and just was kind of, bouncing around and careening through life, as most of us are, when he got into this situation where he found himself in the jungle. And of course,
I think it's a wonderful book.
the title is so beautiful also, which is what he describes. That's the using dualistic language. The best he could do was perfect, brilliant stillness.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Yeah, I love
and the idea that perfect brilliant stillness is outpouring constantly.
Yeah,
Outpouring constantly.
yes, yes.
I like that.
And that is what I is.
And that is what I is, exactly.
You know, you can get the book online for free.
Really? I thought you said it was very expensive.
Oh, no. If you, no, I meant online. If you order it like through Amazon or something, I think that is expensive. I don't remember. But if you go to Perfect Brilliant Stillness, I think .org, he's got the whole book available on the internet. So you,
Good.
you know, for those that like to read it on the internet, it's there.
Well, I'm gonna try to make my way through a chunk of it, and occasionally I'll be back to give you a report
Good,
on what happens and see what we can glean from it.
good. Now, guys, we won't be meeting next week, but we will meet the week after. Okay?
Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Buonanotte, everybody.
Buonanotte.